Good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk on coronary perforation, and we all know that we face this problem once a while when we do coronary angioplasty and stenting. So I'd like to keep this talk very practical. Just bear with me for one or two more slides, theoretical slides, and then there will be 2 or 3 cases on coronary perforation. So the incidence is around 1.15 to around 0.59%, but important point is that those who have a severe grade of perforation, that is grade 2 or 3, they may have a mortality up to 7 to 17%. Just a brief mention about what are the grades. Type 1 is just extra luminal crater, and generally it doesn't bother because many times it responds to prolonged balloon inflation proximal to that or a stenting, but more worrisome are the type 2 and the type 3. In type 2, there is no definite frank perforation of a channel of more than 1 millimeter, but definitely there is a pericardial or a myocardial blush as compared to type 3, in which there is a frank ooze either into the pericardium or maybe into the cavity. If you see why is it important that in grade 2 and in especially in grade 3, if you see there is higher incidence of death, MI, emergency CABG and tamponade, obviously that's why its management becomes very, very important at a very timely intervention. So before I go into my cases, a practical way of looking into coronary perforation is there are 2 areas where a perforation can occur, one at the area of the disease and one at a vessel or a point which is very distal. So the point which is very distal to the area of stenosis is generally or always almost because of a coronary guide wire. Generally these are generally benign, not always. You will see in the subsequent slides. These are because of the small vessel perforation, and the notorious wires are the hydrophilic CTO guide wires. As compared to the major perforation which occur because of the devices, we have used rotablation and directional atherectomy, and we have definitely landed up into major catastrophe because of these ablation devices. Then the other problem could be because of the balloon rupture. This generally occurs in a patient who has got a calcified lesion, and you just try to break the calcific spur or spot, and then it ruptures from a point. It may happen that even the pressure may not be very high, but still because of the spur which punctures the balloon, there can be a jet which can tear the vessel and can cause coronary perforation. Definitely balloon oversizing is one of the major culprit, and it is said that if you are using 1.2:1 balloon with a pressure more than 10 or 12 atmosphere, it definitely predisposes a person to higher incidence of coronary perforation at the point of stenosis. And obviously if you have gone through in a CTO, if you have gone through a false lumen or you have gone through a collateral and try to inflate a balloon, you will induce perforation even with the help with the guide wire also. Now I'll run through these cases. There are 3 cases, and this is the first case, complex CTO. You can see that a single vessel disease, a 60-year-old female, lot of bridging collaterals, but important point was that there was a small micro channel. So initially a Fielder wire was tried. Somehow it could not be negotiated across the stenosis. So what we did was we took a cross wire NT. This is a polymer jacket hydrophilic wire for CTO. In this LAOU, if you see that this wire has actually gone out, but good point was that it was still catching some branch, most likely it was a RV branch. So subsequently we always check in 2 different views, and in other view the wire was repositioned into the RCA. Then the problem came about the balloon. Since it was a CTO, no balloon was going into it. So we took a 1.25 millimeter balloon, created a channel, followed by an Oxford or ETO 2.5 millimeter balloon. We were very happy that the result was very good, but this is what we landed up later on. There was some difficulty in withdrawing this 2.5 millimeter balloon, but once we took a shot after that, we realized that a mess has been created distally. Though throughout the procedure, we were worried about this particular area, and somehow this was a mistake that we failed to see what is happening over here. And I'll show later on, somehow there was a capture of videos what exactly happened. So immediate reaction, first reaction is to inflate a balloon. You inflate a balloon at the proximal end. We kept on inflating the balloon for 10, 15, 20 minutes repeatedly and kept on checking. Still the ooze was there. We reversed part of heparin with protamine. Again we checked it. Still the ooze was there, as you can see in this subsequent Sinase. So then, obviously, at this time, now there is a lady who is was having a CTO of RCA. We were able to cross a CTO, but now this leak is not responding by prolonged balloon inflation, and even after some reversal of the protamine also, some reversal of the heparin with protamine also, she started accumulating a bit of fluid into the pericardial cavity and had some vague chest pain with mild drop in the pressure. Now, at this time, patient's hemodynamics were much more important than the importance of this vessel. So the next step was we have to somehow get rid of this perforation now. So immediately there were two things which came to mind. One was the coil and the second one was a gel foam. Since this vessel was a very tiny vessel and the micro coils are not that routinely available, so we thought in terms of using gel foam. So a micro catheter was put. Important point, a practical point is that you have to keep this micro catheter way ahead of the perforation, because once you inject gel foam, it has to go distally, and generally it takes a 1 or 2 millimeter distal step. So you have to be slightly more proximal when you are injecting gel foam, and ultimately the gel foam was injected, as you can see in this video, and this was the final result. Yes, we did cross a CTO, we were very happy, but ultimately we messed it up. Why did we do that? If you see here, where was the fault? The fault was that when we were trying to pull out this balloon, which was not coming, maybe it was having a lot of wings, just to be an extra secure, you always keep a tug on the wire, and these hydrophilic wires are notorious. They don't give you any feel, and you are focusing on the area which is of prime concern, but distally what you have done is cross the wire into some tiny septals and it caused a major perforation. Yes, I could have been better, or we could have been better in this case if I would have realized that this wire has to be always kept in a greater lumen, especially if you are using a polymer coated hydrophilic CTO wires. And secondly, once you have created a channel, immediately replace this wire with a routine wire or a workhorse wire like a BMW wire. Then obviously your life is very easy after that, and you are not, or you will never mess it up later on. Case number 2, 72-year-old male presented with ACS, underwent a stent in the LAD about 10 days back, took up for a stage PCI to the RCA. Straightforward lesion, we thought that it's too long a lesion, maybe we'll just put 2 stents. So if you can see in this video, there was some delay. I mean, the lesion was not giving up, so we were increasing the pressure gradually. So we went up to 1820 atmosphere with the stent. This is what we created after that. So obviously this was created because, now this is a major perforation. You can very well see that there is a lot of staining outside, and perhaps this was the channel which was giving a whiff, and it could have led on to later on a catastrophe. So important point, as compared to the previous case which I have shown you, where I could dare to compromise on the vessel, here you cannot think of compromising the vessel. So you have to have a stent graft in place, but before you really go ahead with the stent graft, the first thing you will immediately do is place a balloon proximal to the lesion and give prolonged inflation, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. Never been a hurry to reverse the heparin, especially in these critical vessels where you can produce lot of ischemia and can actually complicate the matter much more than this. In this case, as compared to the previous case, we were very lucky. The jet actually gradually sealed off, and subsequently we could carry it on. We did check the ACT, we tried to maintain the ACT at a proper level, and then finally we got the final result, which was by putting another stent in the distal vessel. So we were lucky and had a narrow escape in this particular case. But that may not be true always. We may have to have a compromised result finally. So this was a case, a 75-year-old lady, the third case which I am showing. This was a diffuse LAD, had a class 2 to class 3 angina, other vessels were normal. There was no obvious calcium in this, but the vessel was definitely diffuse. And if you see over here that there was a definitely dog boning of the balloon. Once this happens, obviously this area is not giving way. So you have a tendency to slightly increase the pressure. You never know when this vessel is going to give way. You have to focus on this video first. This was what we did after that. Again, a small perf. This perf was at the perhaps at the point which was not giving way, and this led on to a patient did complain of chest pain at that time. Hemodynamically remained stable. So we immediately inflated the balloon proximal to that, and then this was the final result. The active ooze was not there. Definitely there was a crater which has been created because of this perforation. So at this time, now we have to take a call whether you have to give importance to this vessel. If yes, we have to give importance, and what next? Road ablation is out of question. You have already messed up the artery. Cutting balloon, you have already perforated. You cannot dare to put a cutting balloon now. Perhaps if I would not have inflated the balloon first and I would not have created this mess, I would have taken another wire and tried to make a poor man's cutting balloon. But at this stage, yes, we have to have a controlled aggression. So we quit at this time, and patient did settle down, pain definitely settled down, and maybe we'll, with a thought that we'll take up this case later on with some sort of a ablative or a shaving of a ablation of a calcific spur later on, and can do the case later on. So in a briefly next 2-3 minutes, I'll just mention about how to handle class 1. I have already told you the perforation are simple. You have to just put inflate a balloon proximal to that, and maybe sometimes even a stenting can definitely seal that. In class grade 2 and grade 3 perforations, important point is that you have to give prolonged inflation. Prolonged inflation is the most handy thing which has to be done immediately. This is a very common sense actually. Another practical point is always that never be in a hurry to reverse the heparin, unless obviously it's a free-flowing type of a tamponade you have created. Because you see, if you have not done an echo and you have not found out that you have created a tamponade or not, moment you give protamine, what will happen that everything will start clotting down, and then to drain this pericardial effusion will be a big mess, and it will unnecessarily produce some sort of a asymmetrical type of a tamponade, because the clot which will be formed over the ventricle and over in the pericardium, and you will not be able to drain it by some sort of a pericardial drainage. So the other modalities which you should always have in lab is in terms of microcoils, which are made by 2 or 3 companies, which are preferably, if possible, O14 compatible. If not, then definitely O1 up to O18 compatible. The first case which I showed, we had a gel form embolization. It's a very handy thing because one, it's easily available, and secondly, important point is that it's an absorbable thing, and with a hope that some area of the myocardium would have been salvaged, because there were some collaterals which were given from left anterior descending to the right corner in the first case. So in these cases, once this get absorbed and this local hemostasis is achieved, maybe you can venture to take up these cases again. Another important particle, especially for the distal most circulation, are the PVA particles. Basically, they choke the capillaries and try to prevent any active ooze from the distal circulation. And obviously, no lab is complete or no cath lab stock is complete unless you have stent graft, because if you are taking complex cases, especially with some ablations, you should definitely have this in handy. If there is a free-flowing tamponade and the vessel is very important, one practical aspect is to use a double guide catheter technique in case you want to stent it, because the patient will not give you time even to put a stent. You have to deflate a balloon, take it out, and then put a covered stent. So what you do is that you put first, you puncture the other side, and you first give a prolonged inflation with a balloon, take that guiding out, then put another guiding and slightly deflate it, and so that the wire is taken out, and then take the stent nearby and then slightly deflate the balloon and put the covered stent over there. In that way, you will get some time to prevent a massive tamponade, and you will be able to put a stent graft in these particular situations. So the take-home messages is that coronary perforation, they are going to happen if you are doing especially the complex cases. Case planning is essential. Do study angiogram prior to that, whether there is any calcium or not, and what are the vessel sizes, what all stocks you have in the laboratory, in your cath lab. Prevention and early detection are the keys. Balloon inflation is life-saving and gives you time. And always look for distal vessel at the final angiography, especially if you are doing CTO interventions. And I always believe in this, that never be overconfident, and at times, if it's not your day, controlled aggression at times is a better thing to have as compared to just messing it around more. Thank you.